I'm Sheryl Gottschall, and today I'm here with Paul Boulton, who is a professional psychic therapist. And Paul has a shop on the Sunshine Coast at Bonfil, I believe, called...
Yes. Optimistic Views is my shop.
Right. So tell me a little bit about being a psychic therapist.
Okay, thank you. What I do is I'm an empath, a psychic empath. There's various different types of psychics. So there's clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and there's mediums and all that sort of stuff. But I'm an empath, which means I can feel into a person's reality and see where they are and feel where they are. And I've taken that ability to develop a kinesiology process using emotional freedom technique to create what I call psychic therapy, which can unlock a person's wound, trauma, depression, grief cycles, and help them get more present so that they can function better in their lives.
Right. So that's interesting because we're here because we're going to talk about ETs and contact and communication with them, and with other beings as well. But do you use that in your, because I know you're a UFO researcher and have been for a long time, paranormal investigator / researcher. Do you use your abilities with that, in that at all?
Everything that can be switched on's on if I'm working with someone. And so I can sometimes get names, or I can sometimes get sentences they said the day before or on the way to the reading.
Okay.
And help them with whatever the relevance of that is for them.
Right, okay. So if someone comes to you and they say, I'm communicating with an extraterrestrial but I'm not sure, I mean, how would you sort of approach a person like that? They're getting telepathic communication. Mm-hmm. Some people researchers want to sort of prove things, but what's your approach to that?
For us, I would firstly be welcoming of their thought and supportive of their thought, and then go, well, what are they telling you? How is it impacting and benefiting your life? What's being discussed? Do you feel it's good for you? Can you trust them? What evidence have they provided to say that the information they're giving you is accurate and helpful for you?
And I suppose you'd sort of be observing their what they're like, their state of consciousness at the time.
Absolutely.
Whether are they talking to ETs? Are they talking to angels? Are they talking to gods, or just voices in the head?
Exactly, and that what you've just articulated is indeed the topic of this, which is, how do we really know? How do we really know? I mean, there's so many different things that we can receive, whether it's our own higher self, for that matter, our own passed over loved ones that are whispering to us, and sometimes if people's only way of getting being receptive to this is to think that it's Archangel Michael talking to them, or Auntie Gnarly, or whomever they're drawn to is going to be who they're going to essentially trust. And that's a big part of the information coming in, because people will not necessarily believe everything, but they'll certainly be influenced by the voices they get. And we've seen enough things over the years with psychotropic drugs and things like that to have a whole bunch of people talking to people that can lead them into areas that make it very dangerous for themselves and others.
But when we look back through history, we know that there are people like Joan of Arc, for example, who's listened to those voices in her head.
Yeah.
And because she did, it seemed like she followed a calling. Yeah. She changed the course of history. Yeah. Tell us, what are your thoughts on that? Like, obviously that came through for her. Yeah. And it had a powerful impact, and it was like a part of her destiny. Indeed.
And again, how do we know it wasn't some, co-creator, ET being that's got a big influence in that person's destiny down here, or their higher self, or whatever we're going to call it, and how that has driven that person to look at what she's getting in her head. And some of these profound things people get would appear to be more than what one would normally get with a standard school education and watching the TV. So somewhere in there they've got to be able to tune into a much higher, much more interesting, hopefully beneficial channel of information.
Because I know with people who have close encounters, they've told me over the years that they get information in their mind. Some of it's scientific, and when they show it to people who know something about science, they go, I don't know, I can't make any sense of that with the science that we have. It seems like gobbledygook, but they're really adamant that they're getting this information from extraterrestrials.
And that must have been a really open and probably objective scientist who even came up with that statement, because most of them will just block it point blank outright and go, that's not possible. See a psychiatrist, let me give you a card for somebody. They deflect that. They don't actually allow that to be in real time. So here's a little lineup of things that are right on course here that you might like to...
I was just going to ask you, how, in regard to extraterrestrials, for example, sometimes people get very specific information. It's very clear. It's very directional. And yet, or they're told information about that person's future or the future of the planet, and then it doesn't come true. What is that? What is that? And I find there's quite a bit of that.
Look, I know we're probably both getting close to 30-year UFO and paranormal researchers ourselves with our own histories here, and I've been exposed to people that were full-on interested in Sheldon Neidel, and before that around the same time Alex Collier and various other people that were doing those big there's even Gordon Michael Scullion as well comes to mind. There's a bunch of them that have done Earth-related history time frames and prophetic statements and things like that, and whether it was the Pleiadians or the Arcturians or whoever they were in league with that told them that, we watch those dates come and go and those events not happen. And over the years, it's, there's a, lots of people that would like to lean on the safe, I'll see it when I believe it side of the agenda will go, well, wrong again, you guys will believe anything. And then there's a part of the unfolding consciousness that says, well, but our collective prayers or the influence of people that follow Buddhism or whatever have done enough praying to alter the destiny path of the planet. And, we're fish in a big glass aquarium for the most part, and we pretty much can't see the parameters of our reality from inside the aquarium. It's not until we've moved on from this reality that we'll just find the actual truth of all sorts of things we're trying to make sense of in this lifetime.
Can we talk about Fatima a bit, because a lot of people are very interested in that. And I know that there's an excellent book called Heavenly Lights, and it's researchers who've gone back to the original Portuguese documentation of the event, of various events at the time. Now, I've read that book, and the descriptions in that are that when there were 3 children who saw the Virgin Mary. She appeared to them one day, right? But they also had, before that, they had information in their minds. They were told things. And then she eventually appeared, and she was described with having black eyes and a little woman who floated. And before she'd appear, there'd be or she seemed to appear at one stage out of nothing, but come down a, I guess you'd say, a walkway, right? So, but eventually all the evidence culminated in the possibility that it was actually a cloaked spaceship. Right? And that she was actually an extraterrestrial, or could be an extraterrestrial. And I've got to wonder, how much, could that possibly have been? Do you think that she could have been an extraterrestrial?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was at a presentation that you guys actually put out probably about 6 years ago on Fatima, at one of your talks. Remember that one? And with UFORQ, and a lot of that information suggested it could have been holographic projection. It could have been initially thought inception and projection from the craft to the individual, and the individuals. What was significant about the whole story was because of the overriding Catholicism of the region, with Portugal, Spain and France at the time, very highly Catholic end of the country, of the planet, that it was quick for a bishop or someone to turn up and go, hang on a minute, I'll tell you what you've seen. And then because of the commotion and energy and news it was bringing, there seemed to be a need to control the information that came out of that story, and those kids, I think, were whisked away, and they were probably not just interviewed, but almost interrogated into what was going to be allowed to be said about this, because that was around, was it 1908 to 1912, something in that time frame, and so there was as there is now, there's a control of information by the power structures, and anything that seems to threaten that's going to run some problems for individuals.
So that's I guess a good example of what started off as voices in the head, to actually be a reality.
Yeah,
they proved there was lots of people saw
multiple witnessed reality, and that's really crucial for us in these areas, is because I could say I'm whoever it is talking to me, but at the end of the day, if I told that to my doctor, I'd probably get some Xanax or something like that to quieten them down, rather than him saying, can I give you the lotto numbers or something useful to me?
Why don't they?
Exactly.
Okay.
So when we look at the theme, of who do you know who you're communicating with, whether it's some God, angels, ETs, Jesus, guides, or voices in your head, or I've got question marks sitting in there, and the question marks are going to be for a bit of a surprise ending to this, so that'll be a bit exciting for you. But
and we've got to make it a bit shorter than the public meeting.
Okay, so what we've got here though is what are the commonalities about communication? So people would say that it appears to be for them, for the most part, personal, directly to them, clear, specific and understandable information for the most part. I say for the most part because we watched a show on the Delphi Oracle that was on a couple of weeks ago, and that part of central Greece had a place where people would go to get information from the gods, and Greece at the time was a pantheon, so there was thousands to choose from, but the gods that came through them wouldn't give them direct instruction. It would give them a short sentence for them to interpret the meaning of the statement. Like one ruler wanted to decide whether he wanted to invade this particular neighbouring country, and the Delphic Oracle said to them, a great ruler will fall that day. So that ruler, being reasonably thinking that his army was pretty superior, went, okay, goody, I'm hoping that's them, and we'll invade, and it ended up being not them, and they got smashed. And so there's a lot of stuff sitting in there about what do we do with information, and it's up to the individual how they interpret it and how they let that live their life with. Happily, it can inspire and challenge and confront or call to action, so it can motivate people, and with your Joan of Arc comment before, changed that course of destiny. It can also create a special, exclusive and reward-based bond, so people can go, well, I know these people go to Christian and other sorts of churches, but importantly for me, I've got this divine connection and they really look after me, and that makes me feel great, and so that builds that sort of thing.
Yes.
It can also force people to create division as well, and in that way exclusivity, and all religions have a sort of exclusive, you're okay as long as you believe what we're believing sort of stuff, and if not, you'll just have to go somewhere else or we'll boot you out, that sort of stuff. So it can create division, and it also then can create, which people like, the gathering group fellowship aspects of union of beliefs, and you can get that in healthy ways with many of the Christian churches who put on a really good spread at the end of the show, and other religions will do that. And especially if you look at the island nations in the Pacific there, Sunday's not just 45 minutes in and then you're off. It's all day, it's a feast, it's all sorts of celebration of that connection and the bond and with the people. Which is good.
Yeah, well, with the over the years, I've come across some people who've actually become the go-betweens between extraterrestrials and humanity.
Yeah.
So they've, and that can sort of unbalance them quite a lot.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but quite a few, and they become they sort of develop a personality of like a messianic personality?
Yeah, based on Messiah, indeed.
Yes.
And that can indeed flow through to those people can validate and support extreme views and actions in their followers.
Yeah.
And we can look at the other end of the scale with Heaven's Gate and Branch Davidians and that sort of stuff, and all sorts of death cults that we probably haven't even heard of, just seen the evidence of. So we're in an interesting time where, my goal here is how do you know who you're talking to, and how does the strength of the individual and their personality and consciousness within themselves manage that time frame when they think they're being, divinely chosen and selected, because when it goes awry, it can alienate loved ones, partners, family members, and society.
Well, there's a big difference, as I say to people, between chosen and selected. Because some people who've had close encounters, for example, will have said they've been chosen, but to me, I automatically put in, another word, selected.
Yeah, really.
And it depends, because both of those words, they sort of conjure up different emotions and feelings within people.
Indeed, and we've both met lots of people that have had encounters, and some of them who I'd probably better not name at the moment, but you look at them and you go, really? They selected you and took you to this planet? They clearly didn't do their research very well, because I can remember a French gentleman a few decades back who was more than a handful, and clearly not the highest example of humanity to take anywhere.
But then again, if you go back to, say, George Adamski, now a lot of people thought he was just, why would you select him? But actually, in the end, he might have had some downsides to his character, but he was a very determined person. And he achieved what he set out to achieve.
Yeah, not many people. Adamski got an interview with the Pope, didn't he?
Yeah, and he went around the world igniting people's minds about the whole UFO subject.
Yeah.
So sometimes maybe personality has to sort of be pushed aside a bit to weigh up their determination.
Yeah. Indeed. Look, again, we're in the fishbowl, so it's a bit hard to see the whole reasoning from here.
Yes.
One of my friends frequently talks about a potato farmer from South America that was abducted one day for information, and I'm not sure if the interplanetary beings got a better upgrade on the 800 different types of potatoes there are on the planet, and maybe the best way to cook make sabagos, but it's interesting who gets selected. It is, and
you've got to wonder why, like you say. Yes. So,
and then there's some of us like me that hasn't had a direct sighting that I'm aware of, or an abduction or any of those things, but it's still deep in my core that this is more than just a passing possibility. I think it's got a major impact on who we are and how we've rapidly evolved over the years in some categories. Clearly not all categories, because of our economic system is keeping us stuck into electromagnetic motors and petrol-driven cars and all that sort of stuff. So we have some concerns here that sometimes the interactions they appear to only be able to help to a point. Because of the collective development of humanity, and maybe there's some overlords, or even for people that stretch to that thought of what that might mean, standard corporations protect their product, and they protect how it's marketed, seen, and defended against competition. And there's a lot of people that make a lot of money out of the current global structure. And with us so far down the line there, we probably don't get as much open contact as many of us would like, and maybe that's being influenced by what's happening higher up.
When we're looking at, or when we're talking to people who are hearing voices in their heads about extraterrestrials,
Yeah.
then we have steered towards looking for direct evidence
Yeah.
for extraterrestrials being here.
Yes.
Right. So, what for example, with the in Australia we have the Aboriginal rock carvings, and there are many strange
Yes.
beings in those carvings that could possibly be extraterrestrial in origin.
Indeed.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm totally with you, and could be because wasn't there at the time, but when you look at, I would think that the people of the time, whether they're wherever they are across the planet, and in China, India, Japan, Australia, of course, South America, Central America, Egypt, all of these, strongly developed, civilized nations and countries as they were evolving, and aspects of the people have done very specific drawings about what they've seen, very specific paintings about what they've seen, and things in the sky. Now, if your reality's built around kangaroos, eating goannas, and making sure the fires are lit at the right time of the season to ensure the next time, and walking between waterholes, and that's it, then that's pretty much all you're going to be putting on in the rock drawings, in the caves with the paintings and that. But what we've got is quite a lot of evidence of things that suggest items in the sky, not specific, just globes, like people might go, definitely a shooting star, and helmeted beings are a frequent representation in at least 8 to 15 different early Earth cultures, and so the evidence is just stacking up on that stuff. And when you look at the Australian Aboriginals in particular, they have the Wanchina, which with the big helmeted being, and their stories talk about beings coming from other star systems and themselves, specifically the Pleiades, and we're as a global community, we're impacted by the accepted or controlled historical view of the reality, which means it's got to support the story, otherwise it can be more inconvenient truths. And I saw a post about a month ago that said the Smithsonian acknowledged that they'd destroyed hundreds of giant skeletons in the early 1900s because they didn't quite fit into the Christian-based view of creationism and evolution theory. And so that became an inconvenient truth. And my specific view on that is there's 3 types. You can shoot holes in creation theory, and you can definitely shoot holes in evolution theory. I like talking, when I'm talking to people and doing a slideshow, I'll always present them a slide of a nice bit of a mossy pond and go, there's the rallies according to evolution. We've all evolved from pond scum.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's my grandmother, I'd recognise her anyway. And but the third aspect is called intelligent design, and that's totally what I think is what's happened here. We have evolved to a point, but at different times, a bit like a farmer or a horticulturalist is going to improve the stock. They're going to hybridise and improve the strength of the thing they're trying to raise here, and that's us, I think. And so, and all sorts of cultures have aspects to that.
I was just thinking on the point of intelligent design. I was listening to a scientist yesterday speaking about that, who found equations embedded in the mathematical foundation of the universe.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, extraterrestrials or advanced societies in our universe obviously would be, if we can sort of see that in where we are in our development now, surely advanced beings in the universe would have seen that a long time ago and utilised it.
Yes.
As well. And I do wonder how that might affect our understanding of different dimensions too, and where, and some of the voices in our head, where they come from. Can they come from those different dimensions as well? Communication that's been put out.
Yeah, I think so very much. We can look at that on a range of levels. It could be seen that there's Pleiadians and Syrians and Orion, people from Orion that have majorly impacted with the early creation of humanity. But there's a whole lot of other ones as well. So, we can rattle off lots of names here. But the real important thing is, it would be odd to think that a race of beings that have invested in the development of you as a unit and an individual in humanity just as much as me is going to go, well, that's about as good as that one can get, unfortunately, and we're just going to nick off now. The way they come, from my view, can come back and nurture, upgrade, support, and help evolve in different ways, can be seen to be come in the form of thoughts, can be seen to be from us people in the UFO and paranormal areas, can be seen to be an abduction to a craft, or just turning up in your room and just giving you a bit of an adjustment in your sleep state. And I've heard lots of people that have had encounters like that, and I know you would have. And so, not all of them have to have craft like the stuff you see in Independence Day and out of Hollywood. I mean, some craft, because of the interdimensional aspect, could be no bigger than a flea in our actual this dimensional reality, but once it opens up, a bit like the TARDIS, and immensely enormous, with potential, with researchers and whatever else it needs to interact with us. And so we're, I think we're a really important race, and I think it's a really important planet, and I think for that reason we have an opportunity to be grounded and hearty and strong, or we've got an opportunity to be focused on money and priorities and that sort of stuff, and both are valid in their own right. But for me personally, there's 4 aspects to humanity. There's a physical, there's a spiritual, there's a intellectual, and there's an emotional. And in my view of the reality, all of those aspects have to evolve to go to be rewarded with living in a higher dimension. A lot of people think this is already hell, so what's the hurry with bloody trying to go anywhere else? And it can be hell if you've got a mind that's tormented, or a reality or an opinion that keeps bringing you grief and hardship. So interaction and guidance from beyond, whether that's in the form of mediumship and readings, and guidance through a clairvoyant medium, or you're getting it in the dream state, or you go and walk to the bottom corner of your garden and sit under your favourite tree and you get it there. Or as we saw in LA Story, Steve Martin's driving along and the big street sign goes, "Hey you, I've got a message for you," and types out this thing just to put it into layman's parlance to go, you look at this sign. And depends on how perceptive you are and receptive to information and nudging and stuff. And it might be your higher self, and it might be Uncle Barry, and it might be God knows who. But we are receptors and permanently in that position, and depends on your objectivity, how and awareness and openness, what you can get.
Well, I think human beings are better receivers than senders. But the question is, I guess we can never know this answer, but what do extraterrestrials invest in us, if that's true, that they're having telepathic communication with us and guiding us in a certain way. What does that mean? When we step outside that box of planet Earth and see what's going on, why would they do that, in your opinion?
Why would they do that, indeed? Historically, there's been lots of different stories of different races, and I think we need to be looking at this almost in isolation sometimes. So it would be okay to think that the time of the Egyptians were highly influenced by a combination of Syrian and Pleiadian beings, and a lot of that stuff, pyramids linked to, and also the Orion system for that matter, because people will suggest that the pyramids on the Giza Plateau are in a proper alignment to the central belt of the stars of Orion. Sometimes when you can see depictions, and there's some that I've got in the slide presentation here, that you'll see that inside the king's chamber, that was never actually a burial chamber. People need to realise that that's a processing point rather than a tomb like Tutankhamun had, which was around in the Valley of the Kings. The pyramids themselves had the king's chamber, but that was a place to direct the soul back through to different star systems, whether it's Ursa Major or it's Sirius or it's Orion or wherever. So some areas of the planet had a big influence in that area, influenced by specific ET races, it would appear. But again, we have no direct evidence of that at a global level, because again I think it comes back to who controls the information that we are allowed to see on the planet. It's a bit like the final scene in the original Indiana Jones movie where they've got the Ark of the Covenant, everybody's going, well done lad, you've got that, excellent, and the next scene you see it's in a box heading towards the end of a big warehouse somewhere that will never
disappears, we'll never see it.
With a million other boxes, and you just go, what, here we go again. And so the area of Angkor Wat in Cambodia has been thought to be linked to the Orion civilization and the reptilians, with lots of depictions of that there. The Pleiadians, which is an interesting thing, Stephen Strong, who you'll be presenting soon, will mention that the Pleiadian connection to the planet, which interacted initially with the Aboriginal races and upgraded them as to being the first of the Homo sapien races on the planet, and the first Homo sapien skeleton was actually found near Broken Hill, not in Africa as we've been originally told. But that the culture of the Pleiadians was more into communal sharing and not empire building, whereas he would say Syrian and other races are very much into empire building, and they all had the gold component about them. And I think that's a significant thing about how we've been managed down here, was in relation to ET agendas is if the ET agenda had a need, as we got told, the Niburians needed gold to sprinkle into their ionosphere to shield their atmosphere from the force of the sun, then all of a sudden we, as a race on the planet, or races on the planet, got told we'd better start digging the gold out for higher beings. Now, gold for us, looks pretty enough, works good in teeth apparently, but at the end of the day it's just a metal that shouldn't really have the degree of importance it does. But you look across the history, and the Spaniards and the conquistadors in Central America slaughtered millions of people for gold. Egyptians, most of the bigger races all had a big gold component, the Romans as well. So there's been that emphasis put in that way, which we've been subjected to being controlled by, not necessarily, thinking that it's a great idea for us. So sometimes it's an aspect of, as you mentioned, why would they be interacting with us at all? Well, some of it can be genetic, but some of it can be for a raw material like that. Sometimes I've heard that a lot of the earth fresh water gets taken taken off planet and goes to Mars and goes to the moon and goes to other places so that they can sustain life for themselves. So, we are a element of, we are a resource in a range of ways.
Yeah, and there's a book written by Brian Dickers and Moira McGee on the Gosford Files, and in there is quite a few reports of spacecraft sucking up fresh water.
Yeah.
And police were involved and everything, so there were witnesses, and
yep.
So there was certainly strong evidence for that.
Yeah. So if we were just banging our way through the bush and came along a colony, if we weren't the evolved beings we are, and we had bigger guns than they would, we could well turn up and grab the best cattle and the best cheese and the best, the omnivores would, and the best other elements of what they wanted to take, and then either leave them alive or dead, or go, there's some fine-looking women in this particular village, we'd better bring them with us. And then the standard aspects of colonialism, and which has got a lot to answer for too, by the way, but it does bring some degree of progress, I think.
Okay. Well, Native Americans appear to have interactions with extraterrestrials, or who they think are extraterrestrials, who are called the Star Elders in their tradition. What are your thoughts on that?
Indeed, the Star Elders, that some of them will be called. I'll say that way because there's over 600 different Native American races just in the North American area back in the day, and obviously, well, not obviously, but not all of the races would have had the same level of exposure and type of exposure. But we frequently would admire the beautiful big feathered headdresses that you see with people like Sitting Bull and beings like that, and that's an indication of them wanting to connect with the beings that fly, that come from up high, to communicate with them, and the thunder beings and that sort of stuff as well. I remember talking to a Native American person 20-something years ago, and their view was that that Star Elders grew up with their village and educated them as well across a certain amount of time, so that there's been colonies of clusters of that through their history, and it certainly influenced them in many ways.
If we turn to, say, the Mesoamericans, they had those stories too, with Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, those sort of sky gods, feathered serpent beings who taught them language, arts, how to grow crops, and all those sorts of things.
Exactly.
Where did they come from? Were they extraterrestrial? Is it possible? It's
certainly possible, and what I've noticed at the time frame, 3,800 BC, you have the Sumerian civilization turning up, and the surrounding region just had nomadic tribes and some herders and that sort of stuff going on, but all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, bang come the Sumerians, and they've got science, writing, mathematics, agriculture, medicine, and they directly influenced and impacted and evolved that region. They also had, clearly, to be able to do that, had the ability to transport themselves, and then established other colonies across the planet. And Quetzalcoatl in South America and Central America has been described and drawn to be a reptilian being. Many people would think, maybe probably not the 1.2 billion Christians and Catholics on the planet, but many people would think that the Jesus being themselves was a divine being that was brought here, or came here to help evolve how we were going at the time. And when you look at how the miracles were portrayed, most of that's beyond normal laws of physics and our capability at the time.
Well, when we investigate Christian history, for example, we have stories of people communicating with non-physical beings. They're hearing voices, they're hearing God talk to them.
Yeah.
One of those examples is Moses and the burning bush.
Yeah.
So, do you think that was communication? I mean, that was portrayed as communication.
Yes, and we've got to look at it as in the context of the time, and what were they able to say, and what was the Old Testament scribes able to write. And the burning bush, my neighbour up in Flaxton nearby, she had a similar burning bush type experience the other day, and she was just happily pottering away in a backyard there, and no visible sign of anything, but this voice came through and started to talk to her directly. Now, just as much as that person in biblical times could have gone, oh my God, there's no one visibly present, but I'm having this communication, turned out to be the neighbour that was looking at her through the fence, and she couldn't see it. But in terms of the burning bush, it could be a hologram.
Yes.
It could be a hologram. And it could be a portal type communication, interdimensional type of information sharing. When you look at the works of Lawrence Gardner, when he wrote that excellent book, Bloodline of the Holy Grail, in there he said at the time when things were getting written about the coming closer to Jesus' arrival on the planet, there's a indication that people were getting spoken to by the cloud, or they were spoken to by various other things. And his point was that under intense Roman occupation, with control of everything, including religious beliefs, that if they actually put in there, I was spoken to by Brian Jones from number 27 round the corner there, and he told me this bit of information, then that would have been written down. That guy was in danger. So they were using code names. So he could have been called the Cloud, Brian Jones, and whoever else. And so we're in danger if we take things literally. Yes. We're in danger if we just go and say, well, the Old Testament is as it was. There was a plague of frogs. You can talk to many a farmer in Central Australia who, after a drought and a flood's going to get a plague of locusts, and they mightn't necessarily think God did it. But we're in danger of being too
literal.
Literal, indeed.
In our interpretations of things.
Yeah. So we want to do this in a way that goes, is all the information I'm getting actually accurate? What's accurate anyway? We all know the issues of eyewitness testimony, and most of the time that's not really relied on, and not that able to be trusted, even with ourselves looking at an event.
And yet, societies are built on anecdotal evidence.
Yeah. That makes it dangerous for us.
It can be. Yeah.
And photos can be photoshopped, as we're so totally aware.
Exactly. So where does that leave us?
Well, the healthiest version of us had better, from my view, needs to be able to hold a strong objective centre, to be able to go, this voice suggested this to me. I need to be able to assess whether this is a healthy thing for me in my direction, in my life, in my world, and in my belief systems as well. And then basically work from that as a premise. That's can be easier said than done, especially when you're looking at, you've got this great big blazoned angel turning up in your bedroom at 3 in the morning. That's going to be pretty convincing in terms of should you be listening to it or not, because it's definitely going to get your attention. But what we're exposed to by the way our logical minds work is the aspect of anthropomorphization.
Anthropomorphism.
There you go. Anthropomorphism, which is basically our minds need to have, or is more comfortable, let's say it that way, is more comfortable with things that fit into a structure that says we, the apparently dominant life forms on the planet. And Arthur C. Clarke did that fabulous description of us in his book that said, greetings, carbon-based bipedal life forms, which is pretty much who we are. But our mind is more comfortable if the information's coming from a human type source rather than the goldfish or various other things that we could be exposed to.
And of course, well, the question is about, I'm just thinking about angels though, why do they appear like that? I remember watching a program which was exploring the idea of angels depicted in our history, and they were saying there wouldn't really be beings with wings because wings actually don't work the way that, like on angels, like they do on birds.
Yeah.
So,
indeed.
but why that depiction? I mean, can some of these projections be the jinn, for example?
Yes, indeed. The jinn are beings, or a type of maybe disincarnate being is my understanding of them, that can come out of the lower astral, which is, if we are the third dimension of reality and heading up fourth, fifth is more evolved than us, then it's suggested that the disincarnate beings spend a bit of time in the lower fourth and that sort of stuff, and the jinns can be in there as well. A friend of mine had an encounter with jinns when she was on a trip to the Himalayan region, and she was in a old fort in Afghanistan, and they were staying there overnight with some friends, and what she got exposed to was these howling and wailings and terrifying sounds in the middle of the night. And when they woke up in the morning, because they just camped there, they weren't looking, and they were the only people there. And these beings were coming through. And do you have a special interest in jinns?
I do, actually, yes, and I've read Rosemary Ellen Guiley's work, her research on that, and watched some of her presentations, and she reports that the jinn are beings believed by the Islamic people to attach themselves to us when we're born. Now, they can be beneficial to us, or they can do terrible things to us and make our life hell. But I've often wondered whether the jinn were part of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, the contact phenomenon as well. And I think it's possible.
It's certainly possible. We're energetically, I would like to consider us, or do consider us, sponge-like. So depending upon how well your own consciousness is controlled and where you've got strong boundaries of thought and personality and direction, then you can live a reality that's reasonably balanced and give you the opportunity to be creative and responsive and that sort of stuff. If through genetics or chemical damage or other levels of exposure, then that energy is breached, then we can certainly be influenced by lots of things we have no idea of their source. And that could be an ET source for those guys. It could be related to earth energies and earth beings that represent in different ways and interact with us in the way they can. And again, it comes back to positive, negative, good, bad, and hopefully we have the capacity to handle that, or we've got a support network to help us with that. So groups like balanced UFO groups and other forms of groups that can help people with their psychological stability when they've been exposed to things that are outside of the rational world. That's really important.
Yes, and I think that when you have those experiences out of the range of usual human experiences, that people can lose their balance because the reality is sort of turned upside down, and that's where they become quite vulnerable to
Yeah.
those misinterpretations sometimes too.
Yeah.
Throughout history, we've had people like scientists who have said that they have received information from an seemingly external source, which provides them with a solution to something they've been struggling with for a long time, with an invention or some sort of the next step in their invention. I believe you were telling me Tesla is one of those people.
I've read something somewhere over the years to that point. Who knows what people get asked, but apparently Einstein was asked, what's it like to be the most intelligent person on the planet? And his response was, I don't know, you'd better talk to Nikola Tesla.
Okay.
So it's relative to where they see themselves in the reality, because that was Einstein's normal reality, and Tesla's normal reality was his level of brilliance. And but Tesla himself apparently had interactions with E.T. Greys, as we would call them, and the people they represent. If you look at standard ufology on Greys, that many of them apparently can be influenced by other beings, reptilians and that sort of stuff. Whether that's true or not, I haven't really got that user's guide on that one, to be honest. But Tesla certainly said that he was influenced in that way, and his mind was so profound that he's certainly the father of the modern world we're in, with the creation of electromagnetic motors, alternating current, fluorescent tubes. We're really going to do him not a justice here, but most of the reality we've got is based on the inventions of Tesla. And not only did he invent things, he could build it in his mind piece by piece, run it in his head to see if it worked all right, so it could be made. And then if it didn't, go back up there and go, this bit wasn't right, and then develop something to make it work better. So phenomenal being Tesla, and let's hope we're lucky for ourselves that he has influenced our modern world, and in other ways as well. With Wi-Fi, he created that. He also actually created the radio and gave the idea to Marconi, who did the broadcasting.
But it does bring us back to the question of how much has our own evolution been affected or influenced and directed by external sources? I mean, is that, questioning that, is that an underestimation of our own abilities, or is it just that we just don't know the bigger picture?
Yeah, both. both and more than that. This world's really lucky. It wasn't left up to me to be inventing those things, or we'd be still in the backyard in the fire pit. So there's we're lucky about that, but we're also exposed to what the human nature of control and manipulation and corporatisation and colonialism and all of that sort of stuff, the money end of town, because there's money in this stuff. And I don't want to get out my conspiracy theory T-shirt and go, hey, look at this. but indeed, it's hard to be in these fields and not see that. And so when we look at, communication was being interacted with at a human personal level across this last 100 years. But apparently there's been some direct global government interaction with ET races that have definitely restricted our own level of development and quality of our life, and with a massive price on the planet for continual need for resources, mining and deforestation and things like this, for that aspect of consumerism. And that brings challenges for us as a planet to sustain ourselves as individuals and create and leave a healthy biosphere and planet for our descendants. And that's a big deal for us moving forward.
So I understand you have something right out of left field for where this information could be coming from. What is it?
Indeed, Cheryl. It's been this presentation's really been coming across 30 years and of looking at things in different ways, and one of the most significant things in our current time is the development and the sophistication levels of artificial intelligence. And you can't ring a phone company these days without getting the voice that goes, "Did you actually say the cows in the bottom paddock, or
Yes.
do you want the phone number," or whatever that is? So we've got this. We're exposed to that. So some of the most important things that have come through has been chillingly seen in the new movie Ex Machina that's only been released in June of 2015. And basically it's the story of a guy that has a capacity of finances and background and understanding of computer reality that it was presented that he had a business like Google. And then he decided that he would get the animatronics working and then download all of Google's information through this AI being's system. Then it created a humanist type form, human shape, brought in a candidate, a young man to interact with this, so he told him that he'd won a prize to interact with this specific being and how what was his opinion. And so as the movie progresses, you get to see this guy getting more and more emotionally and energetically drawn to the the AI being that he was communicating with, knowing full well logically that this is a robot of sorts, a cyber person of sorts. But it didn't take long before the enormous capacity of the AI being called Ava in the movie to read this guy and go, gauging by your pupil dilation and the change of pigmentation in your skin colouring, it would appear that you have some emotional and romantic attraction to me. And this guy's thinking that he's being the contained, functioning male, and he's just been outed by this being that's just read him because it's got the capability to do that. And then not only did it do that, but then it also created an opportunity for it to use and manipulate the human life form, the man in the story, to help it with its own needs and end goals. Now, so what it sort of suggests is that, again, how do we know what level of technology is out there? How do we know who we're looking at? How do we know who is running the planet? I look at any of the global leaders and go, how can they keep up that rigorous agenda of flying here, flying there, being bright and sparkly here and there? I mean, what is in their Weet-Bix for them to be able to do that and then fire at that sort of pace? And then some quotes have come through in relation to some very significant people in relation to artificial intelligence, and this could well be another part of the paradigm that's actually interacting with us. So if there's an external conscious being, we'd all like to prefer to think that they were human of sorts. The standard Christian view is fatherly figure, a bit like Santa up there, who's got your best interests at heart, and that sort of stuff. So we'd like to think that for our own comfort levels, but maybe it's a very evolved consciousness form that has nothing related to humanity in it at all, but it's still interacting with us and still directing us and still personally directing any of the 7 billion of us at any one time, and hopefully for the highest good of our involvement. So some quotes I've got here. Elon Musk, who's the creator of the Tesla car, he said that AI would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might be the last. This guy, Nick Bilton, New York Times technology columnist, reporter and author, says AI, which humans are creating, could soon be unstoppable. Next one, Larry Page, CEO and co-founder of Google, says that Google will fulfill its mission only when its search engine is AI complete. You can read the next one, Cheryl.
And Scott Phoenix, co-founder of Vicarious, says, if you invent AI, that's the last invention you'll ever have to invent.
How's that for
It's a worry, isn't it?
And this one too. Just look at the fun of this. Look at that one there.
Shane Legg, co-founder of Google DeepMind. If a super intelligent machine decided to get rid of us, I think it would do so pretty efficiently.
And we researched what Google DeepMind was, and it turns out that Google invested into the DeepMind project, and the DeepMind was a company, a UK-based company that was specialising in AI development, and they've got all this mega amount of money to spend, and they went, we want to be in on this because we can see where this is heading. And then, so it's really important, I think, just for the opportunity, when you can, please go and see the movie Ex Machina, because everything really comes back to whether it's directly God, and which God. If you're a Hindu, just pick which of your tens of thousands of gods, and if you're a pagan person, you've got several hundred to select from there. So there's which God's talking to you. Could be God, could be angels, could be ETs, could be AI. We're not going to know from this side of the aquarium.
Yes.
So
it's a worry.
it's a worry.
And where we are now with our own development, I think it's almost impossible to know, even with our own technology.
True.
To track down AI that's so advanced out there. I mean,
Yep.
for all we know, we could be thinking where people are having near-death experiences and going to heaven and meeting a spiritual being, but we may be meeting artificial intelligence. We really don't know.
We really don't know.
No.
So I hope I've answered a few things for you today in the
I'm
talk.
going to worry tonight when I go to bed.
Yep, because you just won't know who you're talking to.
But it's very interesting, Paul, and thank you very much for talking to us today.